Hi, my name is Kieren Barber Wilson, and this is Uncommon.
Hi, my name is Walt, and this is Uncommon.
For those who don't remember or hadn't listened to your first episode, you own a business, two businesses. One is called Sharegear, the other is Dynamic Visuals. Now, Sharegear is focused on camera rentals.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
We were discussing this horror story, something about cash converters, right?
Yeah, it's a long story. Honestly, where do we start? I reckon first the disclaimer. Let's start with the disclaimer.
Okay.
This is, this is the first time that we're probably a couple months into renting things. We're still trying to figure out our process. We've gone through all the planning stage, theoretically we should have enough safety if we get these documents from them, and we've got these insurances and we've got this and that. But that's all well and good. It's once you actually start handing out equipment, you start realizing that there's little loopholes,
you could say.
Such as literally just disappearing off the face of the earth. That was a loophole that we weren't really expecting.
This is a case of definitely the disappearing man. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
that is definitely a thing that Lauren's dad had explained to me before.
Yeah, and it's something that we now know, running a rental company, talking with others who run and have run, but something like a debt collection agency for a rental company has been described by a lot of people who run them as just as important as your electricity payment. It's just something you have to have, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you encounter someone like this, or encounter a situation like Walt and I did. So I think once you realize that, it's just going to happen. It's you will then have the sort of formalities in place to make sure it doesn't happen again.
So what happens in that instance? Someone runs off with your shit. What do? You push it over to debt collector of some sort? Yeah,
so this was a bit of a unique story, just because it was the first time it's ever happened to us. And we sort of knew it would happen eventually one day. Someone is bound, I'm not talking thousands of dollars, but surely someone's just not going to return a lens or not answer the phone. Stuff like that actually doesn't happen a lot. Usually people are just good and bring it back. And it's now sort of dealing with the whole thing about the customer is always right, but you choose the customer. It's not up to them who's a customer. You're dictating who is a customer and who is just someone who wants your gear.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy, so the weird thing was, we had a rental customer who had actually had a few successful rentals already, verified his ID, had a wedding videography business here in Melbourne, did all our due diligence, looked him up online, got his information, did all that. And then what happened was Walt and I were in Queensland on a work trip. And this is probably our first mistake, but we got my girlfriend to come. This is not a mistake on my girlfriend. She did great. It's our fault, but we got my girlfriend to come in and sort of facilitate the rental because we weren't there. That was our first mistake, because it sort of separated us from this guy just by that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we had successful dealings with him.
When was this, by the way?
As
before COVID, or
right before, I'd say. Yeah. Almost exactly 2 years ago, February 2020.
Okay.
Anyway, long story short, he doesn't return his gear. He's got two cameras, two lenses, a Steadicam, a couple tripods.
Fuck.
So
yeah, it was something a bad amount of money's worth of equipment. Long story short, without going into figures.
Yeah, it was a lot. And then, so what happened was, we went through the usual channels of what you do when you do this, send a text, make a call, send an email, do that 5 more times. Then we finally realized, okay, it's like classic Simpsons things, maybe he isn't coming back. And then from there, we were sort of just dumbfounded, didn't know what to do at all. We were we have this verification system in place. I thought this was supposed to protect us already. He had already submitted his 100 points. He was a Australian citizen. He had a successful business that had videos. He even had dealings with other rental companies. And usually all those factors are the things you would if they didn't have any of those bases covered, you probably wouldn't want to rent to them. But yeah, so a couple hours after or days after we realized, okay, damn, yep, this guy just ran off with all their stuff, we just start searching eBay, Facebook Marketplace. And then one of the items we rented this guy was quite a specialized lens. It's like a mini cinema lens for small prosumer cameras.
Yeah.
And we saw the exact same lens on Cash Converters. And we're like, what are the chances someone like has that specific 25mm lens for sale at Chapel Street Cash Converters, 10 minutes away from our office? And then we check the site a bit more. We find another product that he took, a Panasonic GH5. We're like, damn, he literally went to Cash Converters. So yeah, then we go to Cash Converters.
Before that, it was like almost like a lottery system. Like we saw this lens and we're like, surely, like it has to be our lens. There's no way somebody happens to have this selling it in the same rough location that this dude lives in. Anyway, so we call up Cash Converters and we're like, oh, hey, really interested in this lens. Do you mind, is it in stock? Can we like come have a look at it? And they're like, oh, let me just have a quick look. It's just been like recently uploaded to the site, so it might not even be out in the showroom. Yeah, I'll go out back, check. Goes away for a couple minutes, finally comes back. He's like, yeah, okay, so we've got the lens. And I was like, oh, by any chance, do you mind reading out the serial number to us? Because we have every single item that we own serialized. And so like,
but like, where do you take that from the actual device serial number?
Yeah, and you need to have it for insurance. So, but like you'd keep it either way, insurance or not, just so you can keep track of your inventory. But yeah, luckily we had the serial numbers at that time.
Okay,
and I feel like this happened like a month earlier. We didn't have any of our serial numbers written down. Like this was so early in the business, like
we didn't even realize we needed that sort of
He was one of our first customers. He might have even been like under 3 first customers, and he did a few rentals and
So you get the serial number. What happens?
So we've
next?
called up and this dude starts reading out the serial number and we're like cross-referencing it with the serial number that we've got on our screen like in front of us. And it kind of like felt like they were reading out lotto numbers because we got closer and closer. Everything's like lining up
like
until like they finally say
XQ7.
the last like letter that matches up, and we all start screaming. We're like, "Fuck yes, they've got our equipment." Anyway, we're like, "Hey, dude, don't know what to tell you, but like that's stolen and that's ours,
and we coming."
and put it on hold." And anyway, long story short, he was like, "Can't put it on hold. If somebody wants to buy it, they can until you get the police down." And we're like, "Whoa, what the fuck?"
Really?
Yeah.
And so what did you do?
So from there, that night we went to the police station and wrote up a full police report. They retrieved the items that they could from Cash Converters, but some of it had already been sold from what he took from us.
Wow.
So yeah, so
what'd you do with that? Did you make like an insurance claim or?
Well, at the time, stupidly enough, like that wasn't like our insurance didn't cover that scenario.
Because he did the perfect scheme of renting a bunch of items that weren't worth enough individually to like be covered under our insurance policy at the time.
So what do you think this guy was thinking?
I think
have you ever found him or
no
details about him?
We've looked, and so have the police. So there's a current arrest warrant out for him if he ever goes through an airport. This gentleman. So the day may come where we get our whatever it is, probably about $5,000 that he's maybe even less now. Like the items he took were quite odd, but obviously losing any item is a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
But yeah, but he vanished. Like we had his, like as a rental company, you have everything. You have an address, their documentation, like the police went to his address, multiple addresses. I think they went to an address where the roommate or a tenant next door said he'd moved out like 3 days prior or something.
Oh my God.
So it's very, it was very.
And you've never found like a social profile of this guy
nothing.
outside of what he had?
So he had social profiles for a few different businesses that he had run, all wedding photography related.
Yeah.
But personally, like he had a LinkedIn, a Facebook, but not much more beyond that.
I found his dad who lives in another country and runs like a small business.
Wow.
I tried reaching out to his dad's small business.
Anything?
No response.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So I guess this is like a good example, right? Of like people believing when they start a business they need to go spend money on this theoretical idea, but you guys literally learnt the lesson
Yeah, I think like
in this instance, I'm guessing you've got insurance for individual items now.
yeah, like we don't like I don't regret it. Like you got to learn the hard way, sort of thing.
Yeah,
I also don't regret it because theoretically we do have a clause for like when people like miss their return date that like if we have like another rental that's been affected, they're liable for the money that we would lose for that. It's not something that we ever really bring up, but it does theoretically mean that with this one man that has not returned all our items, we have an outstanding bill of about $200,000 of rental.
So if we ever see our day in court, which we've been advised we will, if he does actually get arrested because they still can't find him. But yeah, like I think legally we're still owable to a full daily rate rental fee for each item and each day it hasn't been back in store.
Wow.
So like that Panasonic GH4 that probably today has a market value of like $400.
Yeah,
like,
made you a fuckload of money.
Yeah, it's like, all right.
But yeah, we're probably not gonna get
that's
that
all
money.
joke. Like, it's not good.
And we're not doing it. Yeah, we're not like, we just want our gear back. And yeah, if you're out there, you know who you are.
We're coming for you, motherfucker.
Yeah.